Let's see if I can work the screen. Sure, it's nice to know how to draw, but no one can stop you from drawing the worst horse you've ever seen in your life. Leave that out. That's saying. And the more you draw, the better you get at it. The thing about comics and self-publishing is, you don't need to know much of anything to get started, and once you get started, you're literally only 2 zines away from being an unstoppable force of comics. So if you want to self-publish your comics, just do it. Now, there is a caveat, there's always a caveat, which is that self-publishing is fun, it's also really hard. It does take time, it takes energy, and unless you've access to free printing or a space where you can host your comics online for free, it also costs money. And so it's not something that everyone has the resources to do. So, with the caveat that your physical and mental well-being is always more important than the 6th volume of Captain Pee-Poo Pants or whatever amazing emotional epic you're working on, let's get into how to self-publish our comics. Scully, can you give me another slide?
No, absolutely not. Kidding.
Yeah, thank you. So, self-publishing sounds very complicated. It sounds like you need to have a riser machine in your basement, or understand what a bleed is, or pay Amazon a ton of money to be able to publish your comic. It also sounds sometimes like you need to be able to do 6 graphic novels worth of content on webtoons, just like every week, just churn that out in order to self-publish a comic. And self-publishing can be all of those things, but it's also none of them. The simple fact is that publishing your work is simply sharing your ideas in a way so that more people can read it. Have you ever photocopied an A4 page and given it to all of your crushes simultaneously? That was self-publishing, baby! Did you print off a couple of copies of your story at the local library? That was self-publishing, baby! And did you post your comics online? That is, give it a read, folks, that's self-publishing, baby! So, I don't want you to think that you have to have access to a printer in order to publish your work. That is great, and if you find someone who lets you print stuff off for free, just keep them in your life. If you have to marry them, marry them. But keep that free printing on tap. But it doesn't have to ever look nice, it just has to be done. You can take a photo of your comic and just post it on Instagram, and you started the process of self-publishing your work. And Ollie, I hear you say, why would you start a webcomic by just drawing a picture and then just taking a photo of it and putting it online? And I present to you my origin story. Can I have another slide, please? Thank you. So 6 years ago, I woke up and drew this ugly drawing. And I said, I'm going to make a comic of this. Somebody gave me one compliment, and that was all it took. I said, I want to make a little running gag comic about a little freaky space girl. And it was something that was just kind of for myself. It was just for my friends. I hadn't really done much comics before, and I hadn't really done any self-publishing. I was a project that was completely defined by a lack of forethought and planning. If anybody publishes their work online, you know you should always have a buffer. Ideally, you should have your own website. I was like, those rules don't apply to me. I just made the worst thing in the world and just kept going with it. Sometimes I wouldn't even get around to scanning my work properly, so I'd just take a photo on my phone and upload that to Instagram and be like, that's the comic today, guys. So, if you could give me another slide, please. It was nasty, it was unprofessional, it was seen by 15 people, and it was this comic that made me the person I am today. So, since 2018, when I first drew this page, I have self-published 19 comics and zines, and I'm so tired. But I gained, not the confidence, but truly just the audacity to do that by first drawing these 4 little panel comics and posting them on Instagram where my friends could see them. And through doing those drawings, I learned more about drawing, comics, pasting, and craft just by literally forcing myself to do it every week. And eventually I had enough of it that I could put it together in a book. And from there, by the grace of my peers who knew more about printing and design than me, I got to the stage where I could confidently begin to self-publish my work, which I was already doing. If you listen, you're like, that was already self-publishing. But getting to the stage where I felt confident sending it to a big scary printer and getting copies back. So there can be a lot of pressure on you to be a fully fledged artistic prodigy, and a lot of pressure to be like, I want to make a comic. It's going to be 600 pages long. It'll be the best thing that's ever been done. And the thing is, though, self-publishing isn't about having work that's long enough, that's perfect enough to share. It's about just having work that's done. If I can yell at everybody about one thing, having something finished is more important than ever having something perfect. just like, you're like, this is garbage. I would draw better than that in 2 seconds. I'm like, yeah, but this is done. Like, literally, I finished it though. Don't rewrite yourself a bunch of times. I know everyone's like, you should edit. You should edit, but don't endlessly edit. Don't toil endlessly over a single panel. Don't tweak the pages constantly. The key to self-publishing is to just commit to getting it done. And whatever quality it goes out the door at, you can still be so proud of yourself because most people don't ever get it out the door. And that's what you're fighting against. You're not fighting against the quality of the finished work. You're fighting against just getting it out the door. Because until you have something done, you can't do anything else. No one else is going to be like, oh, you have never drawn anything, but maybe I'll give you a chance. Nothing's going to happen until you start getting stuff done. So whatever quality it is, just get it done. Okay, Scully, ready for another slide? I feel like we're on countdown together. So
We should have like a massive clock.
we should.
Yeah.
Also, so I know how long we're talking for. So how do you get your comic done? You get it done by being kind to yourself. Because the truth is that life will and should get in the way of your comic. You can't spend every waking moment doing comics as much as we all would love to do that. Generally, somebody's going to get married, someone's going to have a baby, you're going to have to see your grandma. So all this stuff is going to kind of come in the way of doing your comics. So when you're setting goals for yourself, you say, I think I could do like a couple of pages. For example, you say, I could do 10 pages in a great day. Life ain't full of great days. It's full of just like slow days. It's full of lazy days. It's full of days where you have to go to school, go to work. So think, what can I actually do in an average week, in a slow month, in a month where like nothing's really going on, and like I don't have a lot of time for myself. That's the schedule you're going to commit to. So when I started my webcomic, the only thing I could manage to draw was one black and white 4-panel page a week and no straight lines. I was like, if I have to actually rule anything out, I won't finish this. So everything will be crooked and wobbly. And that was the only thing that I could actually commit to. And so that's what I did. And some days I wouldn't hit that, but I hit that enough days that I could get something out of it. So don't commit to a 200-page epic. I know everybody always wants to, but don't. Or a 50-page epic, which is what I tried to do. Don't even commit to 1 page a week if reasonably all you can do is half a page a week. Just do what you can actually commit to. So, the other way you get it done is by starting small. You think, my finished comic is going to be 12 or 16 pages. You maybe commit to 24 pages at a push. But the important thing is being able to tell a story in a short space of time. You need to learn you don't learn how to make a long story by making a long story. You learn how to make a long story by making short stories, and from that, learning your craft. How else do you get your comic done? You set a cheeky little deadline. So if you're more motivated by fear, a good way to do it is to look for a local comic convention. Don't start off like, I'm going to go to MCM London! Don't start off there, that's too much. Like, look for like a small local event, a small makers market, and be like, you know what, they seem chill, they have good vibes, I've got a couple of months, let me see if I can get something done by then. And if I don't, you know what, it's okay. Don't commit to like, I'm gonna go to blah blah blah, I'm booking the hotel, I'm gonna do all this, because like it's too much pressure. We're starting small. And then you get to have a cheeky deadline to sort of work towards, it's once I finish the comic, it's 2 weeks, and that's plenty of time to get it like pulp printed and turn it around. So like just sort of set yourself reasonable deadlines like that. And then getting to share a new comic once you finish it with your fellow comics fans is one of the greatest joys an artist can have. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't think, I'm not good enough to be at a table. If I'm at a table, you should be at a table. Like, it's not that hard. And there's no like, who cares? Like, just show up. The important thing is that you're there. You're there and you're looking people dead in the eye as they walk past your table. That's the important thing about being an artist. So, if you make it to a con, with a copy of your work, congratulations, you put reasonable expectations on yourself, you worked to finish a schedule that suited you, and you now have a finished comic and a con at which to showcase it. So, I've got a couple of final PSAs from an old man. Scully, will you give me another thing? Thank you. Okay. Think about your book as a package. Pick up your favorite comic at home, and really think about it. Think about what paper they use. Think about the design of it. Think about the font choices that make that comic so special to you. And then think about how you can take that and apply it to your own work. So when you're self-publishing your work, you're also self-marketing your work. So you've got to think about who's it for, what's the best format for it, like is it going to work best A4? Is it going to work best the size of that canvas on the wall? Is it going to work best as a teeny tiny little book? Those are all things you need to be thinking about. And thinking about like, well, what is the cover? What is the blurb? How am I going to describe it to somebody? Like you finally have like got your mum in the room for 10 seconds. She's like, I've got 5 minutes. Tell me about your new comic. And you're like, okay. And you know, you've got to have something to say. Like, this is the comic. This is what's so exciting about it. And this is how you're going to like, you know, reel people at cons into hearing about your work. Think about how best to describe your story and what format's going to showcase your story to the best advantage. And if possible, try and get a proof of your comic before you send it to print, especially for your first ever comic. Just think about like, what kind of paper am I using here? Like, what does the cover look like? It's all stuff that you can't tell from a digital version of a comic. You can't tell from a digital version very easily if the lettering is too big or too small. So that's all stuff that you can sort of get if you can manage to either get a proof or like, you know, truck down to the local print shop and make them print off one copy and then like have a look at it and see how it's feeling. If you can't get a proof, you can always request free paper samples from printers, and that's a great way to think, oh, like, when I'm like, oh, you should think about paper, you're like, okay, how? You can ask for paper samples, and then you can see them and think, oh, this is really thick, that feels nice, oh, no, this is thin, this is actually what I want to do for my comic. My comic, it'll look really good like on glossy paper, because it's full of colors, or, you know, maybe I want an uncoated paper, maybe that's more how I sort of see my work being printed. Those are all things that make the package more enjoyable for yourself, but also for the people reading your comics. It's easier to proofread. It's also final PSA. It's easier to proofread your work from a printed version. And I know that everybody here proofreads their work.
Do you? Do you?
And you know who didn't proofread their work? I didn't. We go back a slide. Marker's mark. What is that? That's not a thing. I meant maker's mark. Proofread your work, please. Let's move on. When you're printing your fresh, we don't need to go on just yet. One more second. When you're printing your work, you finally got your comic, you're ready to, you know what paper, you're like, it's going on the 300 GSM gloss, everybody, prep, prep, prep. And you're ready to go. You're thinking, how many copies am I going to print? My first ever comic, not to scare you, because you'll do better comic than me, my first ever comic, I did 30 copies. I was like, here we go, 30 copies. I still have, I think, 15 of those copies in my house. So 30 copies, trust me, is plenty of copies for your first comic. And if it all sells through, you get to put a sticker on it that says, my comic is better than Ollie Hicks's stupid comic that only sold 15 copies. And you can send me a photo and I'll cry.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
But if you think I'm lying, I've been self-publishing now for 6 years, and I've literally just started swinging big and doing 60 copy print runs, because I'm like, realistically, that's the amount of people who will regularly buy my work, and I won't have endless copies hanging around my house haunting me. So, and if you do sell out, you get the bragging rights. You get to change your PDF and enter in the words, second print run. And that's so delicious. So, you know, always think, don't print big, aim for that second print run. That's what you're aiming for. And then, finally, you can't define success in self-publishing by money or what someone else is doing. Did you make something? Did you have fun doing it? Would you do it again? And when you do it again, is it a little bit better than what you did before? And did you make friends? Those are the marks of success in self-publishing that you have to internalize. Because unless you're making a dark romance book about Shrek that blows up on TikTok, or your webtoon gets like a 1 in a million Netflix deal, you're gonna have to be doing self-publishing for the love of the game and for your own self-satisfaction, not the money. I know this because I just did my tax return. You're not doing it for the money. Aside from the joy of a crisp new comic made from you, the most important thing that you're gonna get from your self-publishing is the connections that you make with other people. Because although you might make your comic alone, you're not navigating the world of small press comics alone. Your peers will be the making of you. So lean on them and ask them questions, and in return, amplify their work and help them. And one day, take the lessons you learn and pass them on to somebody younger by yelling at a room of people on a Saturday afternoon. So this is I've done it, I paid it off my dues. Can I have one last slide, please, Scully? Thank you. Because I said earlier that my first webcomic was The Making of Me, and that was a lie. The Making of Me was the friends I made in comics when I was a nobody, who taught me what a bleed was, who taught me how to fold a comic, and these are the people who supported me if I had anything to show for myself. So self-publishing is something that anyone can do, but what makes it worthwhile is the community you do it with. So make a friend. And that's the end of my talk.